What if God hinders Satan in the Garden of Eden? Imagine a Garden of Eden where the divine hand of God acts decisively to prevent the serpent, Satan, from deceiving humanity. What would this scenario look like? How would the history of mankind and the spiritual trajectory of the universe unfold differently? This speculative exploration invites us to ponder a profound what-if in biblical history, one that stretches our imagination and challenges our understanding of God's justice, mercy, and human responsibility. 1. The immediate scene. A garden protected. In the Genesis narrative, God placed Adam and Eve in a paradise of unrivaled beauty, filled with every tree that is pleasant to the sight and good for food. Among them, God placed the tree of life and the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. But into this perfect environment came the serpent, subtle and cunning, whose words would unravel humanity's innocence. Now imagine God intervenes. Instead of allowing the serpent to speak his lies, a divine barrier surrounds the tree of knowledge. Perhaps a bright, unbreakable light radiates from the tree so that Satan's deceitful words cannot penetrate. Maybe God sends an angelic presence, visible or invisible, to prevent the serpent from approaching Adam and Eve. In this version of Eden, temptation exists as a concept but cannot act as a reality. How would Adam and Eve respond? Free will still exists, for the tree remains before them. But without external deception, their choices are guided purely by their understanding of God's commands. Would they naturally obey, or would curiosity still stir within them? Could humanity, left without the interference of Satan, remain in a state of innocence indefinitely? 2. The nature of Satan's defeat. If God hinders Satan, the first immediate effect is the limitation of evil's influence. Satan, the accuser and deceiver, thrives on manipulation, doubt, and the twisting of truth. Denied access to Adam and Eve, he is forced to retreat, perhaps prowling outside the garden, seeking other ways to influence creation. This raises a theological question. If Satan is blocked, does evil cease to exist in the same form? Or is evil merely postponed, delayed, waiting for a time when free will alone could lead humans astray? Here we encounter a key tension in theology: God's sovereignty versus human autonomy. Even without Satan's intervention, could human pride, curiosity, or rebellion spark sin? Or is temptation essentially external, requiring a deceiver to trigger disobedience? In this scenario, the narrative demonstrates that God's intervention can limit evil's reach without violating free will. The protective act does not coerce Adam and Eve. It simply removes the malicious influence that would twist their understanding. God hinders Satan, not by destroying free choice, but by removing the opportunity for deception. 3. Implications for human nature. A world where God actively hinders Satan in Eden offers profound insights into human nature. Without immediate temptation, humanity's initial experience is fully aligned with God's intent. Adam and Eve would continue in fellowship with God, walking in the cool of the day, engaging with creation, and naming animals with insight and joy. Psychologically, this suggests a different development of human morality. Obedience would stem from understanding and love rather than fear or avoidance of punishment. The knowledge of good and evil, gained naturally rather than through disobedience, could lead to wisdom without shame. Could human creativity, leadership, and stewardship of creation flourish faster in such an environment? Moreover, the absence of immediate sin might reshape the relational dynamics between humans themselves. Without guilt, blame, or shame entering their experience, would Adam and Eve relate with unconditional trust and love? The ripple effects extend to family structures, society, and cultural development. One can imagine a world where cooperation, justice, and compassion emerge as natural behaviors rather than moral lessons learned through failure. 4. A world without the fall hindering Satan in Eden effectively prevents the fall, as narrated in Genesis. 3. Without the fall, humanity might retain access to the tree of life indefinitely, living in perfect health and harmony with creation. Death, sickness, and suffering, often tied in Scripture to the consequences of sin, might never enter human experience. This raises intriguing theological questions about God's redemptive plan. If sin never enters, is Jesus' sacrifice necessary? Perhaps redemption takes a different form. Humanity may still need guidance, instruction, and communion with God, but the catastrophic effects of sin's spiritual death, alienation from God, and the curse on creation might be absent. Yet one must wonder, would humans, untouched by sin, ever truly grasp the depth of God's grace? Would faith and obedience, untested by adversity, carry the same richness? In this scenario, God's love is experienced directly, without the need for redemption from wrongdoing, offering a pure, uninterrupted relationship. 5. The nature of free will and moral choice. A major tension in this what-if scenario is the question of free will. Some argue that removing Satan from Eden eliminates genuine choice, creating a deterministic paradise. Yet, a closer examination suggests otherwise. The tree of knowledge remains, and Adam and Eve could theoretically choose to disobey God on their own. Temptation is merely externalized through Satan. Removing him delays, but does not nullify the possibility of human rebellion. In this light, the story becomes a meditation on the interplay of divine protection and human responsibility. God's intervention demonstrates mercy and care without coercion. Humanity's moral development might then proceed from curiosity, intellect, and conscience rather than manipulation or fear. The tension between desire and duty, between curiosity and obedience, could still exist, but in a safer, more instructive environment. 6. Spiritual lessons from the hindered serpent. Even as a hypothetical, this scenario teaches profound spiritual truths. First, it underscores God's power to limit evil. Just as in the cosmic struggle described in Revelation, God can restrain the devil when he chooses. Revelation 20:1-3. Second, it highlights the responsibility of humans to act rightly when the opportunity for evil is diminished. True obedience is not simply avoiding deception, it is choosing good even in freedom. Third, this thought experiment invites reflection on God's providence in our own lives. How often has God hindered negative influences in subtle ways through circumstances, divine insight, or the guidance of others? Even without dramatic intervention, God's protective hand may shield us from deception, danger, and spiritual ruin. Recognizing this fosters gratitude, humility, and attentiveness to His guidance. Finally, considering a garden without the fall challenges us to reimagine human potential. What heights of virtue, creativity, and wisdom might humanity achieve if Satan's interference were removed? It encourages us to aspire towards spiritual maturity, even amid unavoidable trials, reflecting on how much more God could accomplish through His people under optimal circumstances. 7. Cosmic implications. If God hinders Satan at the very start of human history, the cosmic story changes drastically. The entire narrative of Scripture, redemption, prophecy, covenant, and Messiah would unfold differently. Would Abraham, Moses, David, and the prophets still be necessary? Or would humanity, guided by uninterrupted divine instruction, maintain a steady course of righteousness? Even the existence of evil angels may be affected. In traditional theology, Satan's rebellion is partly manifested in his success at deceiving humans. Without this victory, cosmic judgment and angelic warfare might take alternative forms. Perhaps humanity becomes a partner in restoring creation rather than a fallen race in need of redemption. 8. Speculative reflections on paradise. Imagining Eden without Satan allows us to explore paradise in vivid detail. Perhaps Adam and Eve experience a life of abundant learning, spiritual growth, and harmony with animals and nature. Work is joy, not toil. Exploration of the world is guided by divine insight. Discovery and creativity flourish without moral corruption. Their spiritual lives could be rich and expansive, with communion with God as constant. Prayer, worship, and meditation might not be motivated by fear or penance, but by love and curiosity. Relationships, both human and with creation, could manifest God's intent in pure form. 9. Lessons for today. While hypothetical, the idea of God hindering Satan in Eden resonates with our contemporary spiritual experience. It reminds us that God can limit deception and danger in our own lives, even in subtle ways. It calls us to pursue obedience, understanding, and love without waiting for crisis or correction. It also challenges us to imagine the potential in humanity when external evil is minimized. How might we live differently if distractions, lies, and manipulations were removed from our daily environment? What heights of integrity, wisdom, and faith could be achieved? Lastly, it reinforces the importance of vigilance, prayer, and spiritual discernment. Just as God could have acted to hinder Satan in Eden, He acts in our lives today, but we must be attentive to His guidance and cooperate with His protective hand. 10. Conclusion. A world of possibilities. What if God hinders Satan in the Garden of Eden? Is more than a question of alternate history. It is a meditation on divine sovereignty, human responsibility, and spiritual potential. It challenges us to think about the nature of sin, the origins of evil, and the possibilities of obedience untainted by deception. In this world, Adam and Eve grow in wisdom, creativity, and righteousness, guided by God's presence rather than Satan's lies. Humanity experiences a relationship with the Creator unbroken by shame, guilt, or rebellion. Spiritual growth becomes natural, not coerced. Knowledge is gained through understanding, not deception. Even in speculation, the scenario teaches that God as hindrance of evil does not remove choice but enhances opportunity. The opportunity to love rightly, to obey willingly, and to flourish as intended. It reminds us that divine intervention can shape the trajectory of history and human potential without violating freedom. In the end, this vision of Eden inspires hope, reflection, and aspiration. It invites us to consider what heights we could reach when deception is blocked, evil restrained, and God's guidance is fully embraced. Though history took a different course, imagining this alternate Eden allows us to glimpse the richness of God's intent, the dignity of human choice, and the boundless possibilities of a world aligned with divine will.